everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into self-compassion.
Ooh, self-compassion.
Yeah, so we found this really cool conversation between a podcast host and a psychologist.
Okay,
And they were talking all about self-compassion, what it is, why it matters.
I like it.
And it's funny, they started off with this question like, are you harder on yourself than you would be on a friend going through the same thing?
That's a good question.
I know, right? And I was like, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think most people are right.
Yeah.
It's like we have this idea that we have to be tough on ourselves to, succeed.
Right, like, gotta have that inner drill sergeant.
Totally, yeah, constantly pushing.
Well, what if there's a better way?
Right. What if there is? Instead of the drill sergeant, what if we had,
A cheerleader.
yeah, maybe more like a coach.
Oh, a coach, okay.
Someone who's, motivating you, but from a place of understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And empathy, not just, yelling at you all the time.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's where self-compassion comes in.
Okay, so less drill sergeant, more compassionate coach.
Exactly. I'm into it. So the psychologist in this conversation, she breaks down self-compassion into three main parts.
Okay, so it's like a recipe.
Kind of, yeah, the key ingredient.
Okay, I'm ready. What are they?
All right, so first up, you've got self-kindness.
Self-kindness.
Sounds pretty basic, right?
Yeah, just be nice to yourself.
Well, it's a little more than that.
Oh, okay.
It's about being understanding and forgiving with yourself.
Yeah.
Especially when you mess up.
So, cutting myself some slack when I inevitably make mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay, I can definitely work on that. What's the second ingredient?
All right, so the second one is recognizing our shared humanity.
Shared humanity.
Yeah, so this is huge. It's about remembering that you're not alone in your struggles.
Oh, I like that.
Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone feels insecure sometimes.
True.
Everyone faces challenges. It's part of being human.
Okay, yeah, that actually makes me feel a bit better already, just knowing that I'm not the only one who, feels this way.
Right. We're all in this together.
Oh, okay, so we've got self-kindness, shared humanity. What's the third one?
The third one is mindfulness.
Mindfulness, okay.
Yeah. So this is about being present with your thoughts and feelings, even the tough ones, but without judgment.
So it's like hitting pause on that inner critic.
Exactly. Creating some space to just observe what's going on inside.
That sounds kind of hard.
It can be, but it gets easier with practice.
Okay, so we've got the three parts: self-kindness, shared humanity, and mindfulness.
Those are the big three.
All right, now I gotta ask, does being self-compassionate mean lowering our expectations or not going after big goals?
That's a great question, and actually research shows the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, self-compassion can actually boost our motivation and resilience.
Wait, so it's not about being soft, it's about being strong.
Exactly. When you're constantly beating yourself up,
Yeah.
you're less likely to take risks or try new things.
Oh, that makes sense. You're living in fear of failure.
Exactly. You're creating this self-fulfilling prophecy.
So self-compassion is more about creating a safe space to grow and learn.
You got it. It's about giving yourself permission to be imperfect, to stumble, to learn from your mistakes without crushing your spirit.
Okay, I like where this is going.
And this leads us to another important point: self-compassion versus perfectionism.
Ooh, yeah, perfectionism. I feel like that's a big one for a lot of people.
It is. It's everywhere these days, right?
It's just pressure to get it all right all the time.
Exactly. And the psychologist we were talking about, she says that perfectionism can actually block self-compassion.
How so?
It creates this illusion that you'll never be good enough, and that leads to a constant cycle of self-doubt and criticism.
Ooh, that sounds exhausting.
It is. It's like you're on this treadmill and you can never get off.
So how do we break free from that cycle?
But she has a great tip. When you catch yourself being super harsh on yourself, pause and ask, what would I say to a friend in this situation?
No, that's good. Because
Well,
I know I would never talk to a friend the way I sometimes talk to myself.
Right. We tend to have different standards for ourselves than we do for others.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like we give our friends all this grace and understanding, but we withhold it from ourselves.
Exactly. And by consciously shifting that internal dialogue, we can start to dismantle those harsh perfectionistic standards and replace them with something much kinder.
So we're basically rewiring our brains to be more self-compassionate.
Exactly. It's like creating a new habit.
Okay, so we're starting to see how self-compassion can combat negative thoughts. But how do we know it actually makes a difference in people's lives?
Well, the psychologist shares a really cool story about one of her clients, Rachel.
Okay, tell me about Rachel.
So Rachel was struggling with imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Basically, she was constantly doubting her abilities even though she was super successful in her field.
Oh, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Right. It's that feeling of being a fraud even when you're accomplishing amazing things.
And it can be so debilitating.
Totally. And Rachel's story is a great example of how self-compassion can create real change.
Okay, so what happened with Rachel?
So she started doing these exercises where she would write letters to herself from the perspective of a trusted friend.
Oh, wow. So like practicing being her own best friend.
Exactly.
I love that.
And over time, it really helped her shift her perspective. She started to see her own strength and accomplishments more clearly, and her confidence grew.
So it wasn't just about feeling better in the moment, it actually led to lasting positive changes.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about her career either. Her relationships and overall happiness improved too.
Wow. So it's like self-compassion has this ripple effect on all areas of our lives.
Exactly. It's not just some fluffy feel-good concept. It can actually transform your life.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. But I have to admit, I still have this little voice in my head that's like, but what if being too nice to myself makes me lazy?
Ah, yeah, that's a common concern. It's like we think we need that inner critic to keep us motivated.
Exactly. Like if I'm not constantly pushing myself, I'll just like sit on the couch and eat potato chips all day.
I get it. But the research actually shows the opposite is true. Self-compassion doesn't lead to complacency. It can actually make us more motivated to achieve our goals.
Wait, really? So being kinder to myself can actually make me more successful?
It can. And the psychologist explains why. It's because when we're self-compassionate, we create this safe psychological space to take risks, to embrace failure as part of the learning process, and ultimately to become more resilient in the face of challenges.
So it's like self-compassion gives us this permission slip to be human.
Exactly, to make mistakes and learn from them without beating ourselves up.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. I always thought I needed that tough love approach to succeed, but now I'm starting to see things differently.
It's a real paradigm shift for a lot of people.
Totally, but it's a good shift. I think I'm ready for more self-compassion in my life.
Me too. It's a game changer.
All right, before we dive even deeper, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll explore some practical tips and techniques for cultivating self-compassion.
This was good. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so we're back talking about self-compassion, and I gotta say, this is making me think about how I talk to myself.
Yeah, me too. It's kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, so how do we actually start being more self-compassionate in our everyday lives?
That's the big question, right? Like, how do we put this into practice?
Well, one of the most powerful things you can do is start paying attention to your self-talk.
Oh, like how I talk to myself in my head.
Exactly. Notice those thoughts that pop up throughout the day.
Okay.
Are you generally kind and encouraging to yourself, or are you more critical and judgmental?
I think I'm more critical than I realize.
I think a lot of people are. We're so used to that inner critic, we don't even notice it anymore.
It's like background noise.
Totally.
Yeah.
And becoming aware of those negative thought patterns is the first step to changing them.
So it's like step one is just noticing what's already happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The psychologist even recommends this simple exercise. When you catch yourself being super critical, pause and ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation?
Oh, that's a good one. Because I know I'd never say to a friend the things I sometimes say to myself.
Right. It's like we have a totally different standard for our friends.
Totally. We're so much more understanding and supportive.
Exactly. So by consciously shifting that internal dialogue, we can start to cultivate more self-compassion. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer to someone we care about.
So it's not just about changing what we think, it's about changing how we think.
Exactly. It's about the tone as much as the content.
Okay, I like that. And you mentioned mindfulness earlier. How does that fit into all of this?
Mindfulness is a big part of self-compassion. It's all about paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
So it's like noticing your thoughts and feelings as they come up, but not getting swept away by them.
Exactly. It's about creating some space between you and your reactions, so you can choose how to respond instead of just reacting automatically.
Okay, so it's like taking a breath before I freak out.
Exactly. And even a few minutes of mindfulness each day can make a big difference.
I can try that. Are there any specific mindfulness exercises you recommend?
Yeah, there are tons of guided meditations available online or through apps.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
Or you can just take a few minutes to focus on your breath and notice your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Okay, so I don't have to sit on a mountaintop and chant to be mindful.
Nope. Just a few minutes a day can make a big difference.
Awesome, I can do that. What about those times when I'm really struggling and those negative thoughts just won't go away?
Well, one thing that can help is remembering that you're not alone.
Oh, right. Shared humanity.
Exactly. Everyone experiences challenges, setbacks,
Yeah.
difficult emotions. It's part of being human.
Yeah, but it's so easy to forget that when you're in the middle of it.
I know it can feel very isolating,
Oh.
but remembering that you're not alone can really help.
Okay, so it's like taking a step back and getting some perspective.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember that these difficult emotions are temporary. They will pass.
Ew, that's good to remember.
It is. It's like riding a wave. It might feel intense in the moment, but it will eventually subside.
Okay, so ride the wave. Don't let the wave drown me.
Exactly. And remember to be kind to yourself in those moments. Imagine a friend came to you feeling overwhelmed or stressed. What would you say to them?
I would tell them it's okay to feel that way and that I'm there for them.
Exactly. And you can offer yourself that same kind of kindness and compassion.
So it's like being my own best friend.
Exactly. It might feel weird at first, but it gets easier with practice.
Okay, so far so good. But I still have this nagging doubt. Like, won't being too self-compassionate make me less ambitious, less driven to succeed?
That's a really common concern, and it makes sense. But the research actually shows the opposite.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So being kind to myself can actually help me achieve my goals.
It can, and the psychologist explains why. It's because when we're constantly beating ourselves up, we create this fear-based environment.
It's like we're afraid to take risks because we're so worried about failing.
Exactly. And that fear can hold us back. But when we practice self-compassion, we create a more supportive and encouraging inner environment.
So it's like giving myself permission to try new things and maybe even fail.
Exactly. Because you know that even if you do fail, you'll be okay. You'll treat yourself with kindness and understanding.
So self-compassion is like this safety net that allows me to be bolder and more adventurous.
You got it. It gives you the courage to step outside your comfort zone.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects, but I'm curious, are some people just naturally more self-compassionate than others?
That's a great question. And the good news is that self-compassion is a skill that can be learned and cultivated, just like any other skill.
So even if I'm not naturally a self-compassionate person, I can still get better at it.
Absolutely. It might take some effort and practice, but it's definitely possible.
Okay, that's good to know. So where do I even start? Are there any specific things I can do to develop more self-compassion?
There are tons of different exercises and techniques you can try. One simple but effective one is to start a self-compassion journal.
Oh, a journal. Okay.
Each day, take a few minutes to write down some things you're grateful for, some of your accomplishments, some things you're proud of yourself for.
So it's like a gratitude journal, but with a focus on appreciating myself.
Exactly. It's about intentionally shifting your attention towards the positive aspects of yourself in your life.
Okay. I like that. It's so easy to get caught up in the negative. It's nice to have a reminder to focus on the good stuff too.
Right. And what about those times when we make a mistake or experience a setback? How can self-compassion help us navigate those tough moments?
That's a good question because I definitely tend to beat myself up when things go wrong.
Yeah, that's a common reaction, but it's not very helpful. Instead of dwelling on the negative, try to approach the situation with curiosity and understanding.
Curiosity and understanding.
Okay, ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I grow from this?
So it's like reframing those failures as opportunities for learning and growth.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes. It's part of being human. Instead of judging yourself harshly, try to offer yourself the same understanding and forgiveness you would offer to a friend in a similar situation.
Okay, so be kind to myself even when I mess up.
Exactly. It's about treating yourself with the same compassion you'd offer to someone you love.
This is all starting to make so much sense. I'm really starting to see how powerful self-compassion can be. Okay, so we're back, and I'm still thinking about all the self-compassion stuff.
Me too. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the things that struck me the most is this idea that self-compassion isn't about being perfect at it.
Totally. It's not like you suddenly become this perfectly self-compassionate person and then you're done.
Right, it's more like a journey with ups and downs.
Exactly. There are going to be days when you're like, yes, I'm nailing this self-compassion thing. And then other days when that inner critic comes back with a vengeance.
Yeah, that inner critic can be so persistent.
It really can. But the key is to not get discouraged.
So it's like learning any new skill. It takes practice and patience.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest challenges is that we often compare ourselves to other people.
Oh, especially on social media.
Right. It's like everyone else has this perfect life and we're the only ones struggling.
Yeah, totally. It's so easy to fall into that comparison trap.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the truth is, everyone is fighting their own battles. Everyone has their own insecurities and challenges.
Yeah, even those people with the seemingly perfect Instagram lives.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to remember that we're not alone. We're all in this together.
Shared humanity.
Exactly. We all make mistakes. We all experience setbacks. We all have those moments of self-doubt.
Yeah, it's part of being human.
It is. And when we can remember that, it takes some of the pressure off.
So instead of beating ourselves up for not being perfect, we can be a little more understanding and forgiving.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to remember that self-compassion isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, what works for one person might not work for another. So it's about finding the practices and approaches that resonate with you.
So like experimenting and figuring out what feels good.
Exactly. It's about creating your own personalized self-compassion toolkit.
I love that. Okay, so it's a journey. It's about shared humanity, and it's about finding what works for you. Anything else we should keep in mind?
I think the most important thing is to just keep practicing. Self-compassion is an ongoing practice, not a one-time fix.
So it's like building a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And over time, it becomes more and more integrated into our way of being.
Okay, so it's not just about what we do, it's about who we become.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's really exciting. Because when we cultivate self-compassion, we not only change our own lives, but we also impact the world around us.
Oh, how so?
Well, when we're more compassionate towards ourselves, we're also more likely to be compassionate towards others.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we won't have much to give to others.
So self-compassion is like this ripple effect that spreads outward.
It is. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it. It's about creating a more compassionate and loving world for everyone.
Wow, I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. What would your life look like if you approached yourself with more kindness, understanding, and compassion? What would it feel like to let go of that inner critic and embrace yourself fully, flaws and all?
It's a powerful question, and one that I think is worth exploring. So thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into self-compassion. We hope you've learned something new and that you'll continue to cultivate more kindness and compassion in your own life.
Thanks for having me. This was great.